You're now listening to All Hogs Sports, covering all Arkansas Razorback sports, such as football, basketball, baseball, and much more. Now, here's your host for today's show, Sam Stimson.
The first Arkansas game has wrapped up. Hogs defeated Rice week 1, 38-17. They scored 31 unanswered in the second half to come back. And really, the difference in this team and the team a couple years ago under that awful head coach who still sucks, Chad Morris, they quit. They would quit back then. But like Dalton Wagner said, that's not the team anymore. And they fought back through the adversity and beat Rice and even covered the spread. The second half team was a team that will compete in the SEC. The first half team, not so much. Scoring 31 unanswered to come back in a game is always nice. And just overall from the game, though, the passing game struggled. And I really don't think it's one fault on somebody. You know, it's not a situation where it's all play calling. It's all QB. It's all wide receivers. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a little bit of all of that. So I guess just starting off with quarterback, KJ Jefferson was 12 for 21 with 128 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. As Pittman said, he was a little bit nervous with the full crowd and stuff, and I get that. You know, this is his third career start, and the other starts were either in front of really small crowds, like the Western Kentucky game, and then COVID last year at Missouri, that crowd wasn't big at all. So, I get why he's nervous a little bit. You know, he's leading a team that's expected to go to a bowl game by a lot of fans. You know, he wants to perform his best, and I get that. But I don't think you have to deal with that in future weeks. He had some overthrows, and just at times he was not accurate. His interception was really ugly. It was on a rollout pass, and Keyshawn Jackson was on the sideline and was guarded pretty well, and he still threw it over there instead of just throwing it out. But you got to learn from your mistakes. I mean, we really haven't seen KJ make a ton of mistakes because his start in Missouri was really good. So as long as he learns from situations like that, and when he gets in another one, he throws it away, it's no big deal. And like I said, I don't think KJ is not capable of being a 250-yard plus passer in a game just based off of what we saw in Missouri. This is, there's a little bit different of a play style from this in the Missouri game. And that's okay because you have 11 more games. And as long as KJ keeps getting better throughout the season, it'll all be good. Pass protection at times on the offensive line struggled. Tackles had early trouble. Wide receiver play, they got some good separation at times, but there was a fair amount of drops, 3 or 4. And then Burks, obviously, he hasn't practiced for a while. When you don't practice that much, you go into games, you're going to be rusty. Burks had 5 catches for 42 yards, and then Tyson Morris was also leading receiver, 3 catches and 42 yards, and a touchdown there. Like I said, though, just dealing with Russ, a lot of new offense. Some play calls just didn't work out as well. And just a play call I don't get in general is the reverse. It just hasn't worked out. If you could take that, offensive chart and look through all the games last year and the first game this year and chart the reverses, they just don't work. I just don't get the commitment to that. It's just frustrating, especially when the offense just isn't working. There's work to be done, and, Pittman would say that, and all the coaches would say that. They would say, hey, this was not our best game, and we have work to do on the play calling side, work to do on QB struggles, wide receiver play, and it's week 1. I get that. So I liked what I saw in the second half. First half, obviously, a lot of struggles, but I liked what I saw in the second half as a whole, though, compared to anything else. A big positive, though, was a strong ground game. Traylon Smith had 22 rushes for 102 yards, 1 touchdown. KJ Jefferson, the quarterback, had 8 rushes for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Raheem Sanders lived up to the nickname, the Rocket. I'll be calling him that from now on. 7 attempts for 44 yards. And when you watch him play, you understand why they call him the Rocket. His burst and acceleration might be unmatched across all SEC running backs outside of probably a top few. I mean, just the amount of speed he has will be so key to the Hogs. And like Pittman said, getting his confidence up in the home opener was huge as well. The run blocking looked great too. I was impressed with what I saw from the offensive linemen, wide receivers, tight end Hudson Henry and Blake Kern did well there too. Overall, I thought it was well, and obviously, Bryles thought it was well too. He had 43 rushing plays and then 21 passing. I don't expect it to be a 2/3 running just because you can't do that in the SEC with how good some linebackers and defensive line are, or teams are just going to stack the box on you every single day. I don't see that continuing, but against Rice it's okay because you kind of just got to do what you got to do. Like if you're losing in a game, you're obviously not going to try out new stuff because you want to win, but you'll probably see some, more experimentation against Georgia Southern. Third down offense wasn't that good too. 3 out of 11, a lot of repetitive play calls. There was one drive that caught my attention. I think we ran the ball 3 times. We ran it on first, second, and then on third down again, and it just didn't do anything. Maybe that's going to change in the future. I don't know if that's, just keeping the cat in the bag. I was kind of thinking maybe, you don't want to put your best plays out there and you just want to save them against Texas. You don't want to have it all on film or not. It could be that. It could be just trying hurry-up offense. Week 1s can be very sketchy with how the offense runs and such. But overall, as a group, KJ's running, fantastic. Passing game has some work to do. As a whole, I thought secondary play held its own ground. Monteric Brown with an interception was fantastic as the CB1. And then Jalen Catalon had 2 interceptions. I could see him being nominated for SEC Defensive Player of the Week. Would be very well deserved. The team only allowed 227 yards through the air, and I know that may seem high for a team like Rice, but they threw the ball 35 times. So if you look at the average amount of yards per play, that's a fantastic number. Fouché also looked pretty good at safety. The cornerback 2 spot, Ladarius Bishop, I thought he had some struggles. He had 2 pass interference calls against him, and then another play he got burnt on, a couple other ones missed a route. I really wasn't able to watch, much of him during the game, but overall, I know as a cornerback, when you get, pass interference penalties, you get 1, the ref's always looking at you, and then you get 2, and you really can't, do those small things that corners do to, get an edge off of the receiver that is really common. And just sometimes refs are just not going to call them most of the time, but they call them once, and then they just start calling them all on you. And that happened to Bishop. Just during practice, you just refine those skills and get him ready for the Texas game next week. And then at nickelback, I thought Greg Brooks Jr. did a good job too. Noticed some coverage plays he picked up, looked well in those. Simeon Blair, the backup safety, also I thought held his own ground too. Overall, the secondary continued to be the strength of this Arkansas defense, in my opinion. Counting with a couple big tackles, too. 11 tackles on the day. Now, the defensive front, I thought was interesting because there was 8 different guys that got playing time. And John Ridgway, the starting nose tackle, defensive tackle, whichever one he plays that kind of rotates between both, he was out for this game. He might be back for the Texas game. We'll have to wait to see what Pittman says. But we had multiple times where we subbed 4 defensive linemen in and out. And I think that was just to find the best 4 guys before next week's game. The first half, the pass rush really disappointed me. I didn't like what we were seeing, but the second half picked it up, and I also noticed the second half had less rotations. So, like I said, you just have to find your best guys. The pass rush in the second half, fantastic. Not really much to complain about there. But something the team actually did well all game, and this also is heavily attributed to linebacker play, I'll get to that after this, was run, tackling, run stoppage, limited the other team to 81 yards. And the leading tackler on the defensive line was actually Tareen Carter, replacing Ridgway. 2 sacks on that pass rush. It's not a bad number. Last year, the team averaged, I think, less than 2 a game. It was really bad. So, it's improvement. Like I said, though, it's kind of hard to judge that pass rush when you have so many guys rotating, because I bet they will not go 8. I bet they'll go 6, 7. And if they do go over 6, I won't be like whole substitutions. The 4-man front, though, was very different from last year, and it was better. More guys, more pressure, obviously, but you have 4 guys who can generate pressure better than a extra secondary guy or linebacker. Now, the linebacker core honestly was strong as advertised. Lots of guys weren't able to play, though, due to targeting. Grant Morgan was tossed in the first quarter due to targeting. Bumper Pool was tossed in the second half due to targeting. He will miss the first half of next week's game against Texas. And then last year, against Alabama, Hayden Henry was ejected from the game and targeting in the fourth quarter, and then he was out for the first half of this game. So 3 out of 4 guys on this list missed time in this game due to targeting. Angie Parker filled in for Morgan in the first half. Thought he did an impressive job just filling the space. He's gotten in a lot better shape. He looks good in coverage, good tackler, and then replaced Bumper Pool again and did fantastic there. Before Bumper went out, he was the leading tackler with 14 tackles, 1.5 being those for loss. Him and Hayden Henry have battled at that linebacker 2 position, so I don't think the Bumper situation next week will hurt us a ton. I'll talk about that more, though, on Wednesday's preview of Texas. And just, the unit was good as advertised. Morgan said that linebacker play had been something that the media has asked, the team about in terms of being like a struggle. And he's like, we don't have that this year. And no lies detected by the senior captain. Now, just to get into the targeting rule. I don't like the targeting rule. I think it's kind of gotten to the point that it does protect player safety, but it's overprotecting and it's not doing that much. And you put situations with defenders and receivers that sometimes you really can't do much to not get a targeting penalty. It's so reactionary, and football's such a quick game that the targeting penalty issue's not, I think, equipped right. And there's nothing you can do about it now, though. Hog fans, whatever your opinion on the targeting call be, you can't be getting these penalties. And I know that sometimes it's frustrating because other teams are getting them reviewed and they're not standing. But when it comes to any time that a Hog defender gets in, helmet-to-helmet contact, he's going to be ejected, it feels like. And that sucks. I get that. I just think in the future weeks, we got to have guys tackling, not be getting in trouble with the targeting rule. I mean, sadly, Poole's and Morgan's ejections, according to the rules of targeting, not what you think they should be, not what I think they should be, according to the NCAA rulebook, it was targeting. So we've got to avoid that. Last season, dealing with targeting penalties was another thing too. You can't have 3 out of 4 of your linebackers being out for targeting in multiple games. And I understand it's frustrating because the rule is so bad and just so inconsistently called. But when it comes to the Hogs, it just feels a little bit different. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. I just think, though, standpoint, you've got to be able to avoid him. I feel bad for Morgan and Poole and Henry for missing time, and they had no bad intentions. I guarantee you all of these plays were accidents. They had zero intentions to get in these situations. And it's just something the Hogs have to avoid in the future. Now, at special teams, honestly, it let me down again. Punting was not good at all. Reed Bauer had 6 punts, 31.7 average. The other 5 punts were fine, but you had 1 blocked punt and gave Rice good field position to kick a field goal. There's no reason we should have blocked punts, especially against Rice. It's inexcusable. And I don't know if that's a talent issue, a coaching issue, whatever it is, it has to be figured out. We cannot lose games due to special teams and things like punt blocks. Formations, just been a struggle too. It's not all on the punter. And like I said, it's just not worth costing wins. Kicking, though, I was impressed by a 34-yarder by the new kicker, Cam Little. 5 for 5 on extra points. Vito Calvaruso did really good on kickoffs. He kicked a lot out of the end zone. I was impressed by the kicking unit as a whole. Good blocking, good timing, way better than last year. Returns, Bishop had 4 returns for 108 yards, and he also had a fumble. outside of the fumble, it was really fine. But again,